Welcome to the What Will We Do Until Spring edition of Sharing Sox. I'm duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent Will, who's been around the celebrations of a team that wins games for the past few days. We're recording this a couple of days after the World Series was over. I do want to bring this is a total aside before we get into White Sox or the season stuff. The What Will We Do Until Spring moment at the end of the World Series. That phrase comes from a great baseball play called Take Me Out, as Will knows. And it's the very last line in the play. And it's said by this character is kind of, excuse me, a nebbishy accountant who becomes the financial advisor to the baseball star who's the center of the play. And knew nothing about baseball, didn't care about baseball at the beginning. By the end, he's a huge fan. He's totally involved with the team and with baseball and everything else. And he says that final line as they're leaving the locker room at the end of the season, what will we do until spring? But when I was working at the Human Race Theater in Dayton, we did Take Me Out. And that role is played by a good actor, fine actor named Brian McKnight. And did a great job opening night. Opening night, he does a fine job. Everybody does a fine job. We get to the very end, and Brian is about to say this iconic final line of this Tony-winning play, and he goes, what will we do until, and there's this long pause, and he goes, summer?
Well, it's a question.
He couldn't believe he did that. Of course, he took a lot of ribbing for that. And he told me, he says, I don't know. He says, my brain just froze.
That is unbelievable. Wow. That's like Tiny Tim being like, and God bless us, every last person here at this Christmas party lights out. That is too funny. That is, wow. Well, yes. So baseball is over. The Dodgers are currently celebrating their championship in the stadium, hoisting their trophies. I was fortunate enough to attend Game 1 of the World Series, where I believe something memorable happened. Maybe not quite to Kirk Gibson level, but almost to Kirk Gibson level in Los Angeles sports fans' eyes. The Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam. This World Series was interesting. It was equal parts spectacular and not really all that great or interesting. The reason for that being the Yankees just did not show up to this World Series. They really did. A few of them did, but most of them did not. It really showed to me just how not great the American League was to finish out this season. I think the American League side of the postseason, I'm not sure the series would have gone any differently with Cleveland. I don't think Cleveland was prepared to win a 7-game series against the Dodgers either. But the Yankees just did not show. And what they did do is give us, if you are anti-Yankee, which if you are not a Yankees fan, you are anti-Yankee. It did give us maybe the most memorable inning of baseball of my life. Professional baseball, certainly postseason baseball. I think back to the great moments, the Edgar Renteria walk-off with the Marlins, the Luis Gonzalez walk-off of my favorite World Series that the White Sox did not win since I've been alive, which is the Diamondbacks beating the Yankees in 7 games in 2001. But this World Series gave us maybe the worst inning of baseball, which was the most delightful and unbelievable. I think my jaw is still on the floor in the living room from the 5th inning of Game 5, which is an inning that will live in infamy. I truly believe that. I think we will have a 30 for 30 on ESPN about this inning. Had to talk about it. I mean, you are up 5-0. The momentum seems to be going entirely your direction. I mean, I'm sitting with a couple LA people. We're watching this game. When they go up 5-0, you're thinking, holy crap, Yankees in 7? The momentum had shifted so violently in favor of the Yankees through the first 4 innings of Game 5 and after Game 4 that I'm shaking in my boots a little bit. It's still, no one's ever done it in the World Series. No one's ever come back from 3-0. So you have that comfort.
Nobody's even ever made it to 3-2. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah. But a team has come back from 3-0 against the Yankees. Probably my favorite ALCS of my life.
The Red Sox.
Was watching the Red Sox do the thing that no team had ever done in any of the major sports at that point. I believe it's happened in hockey once since then, but still hasn't happened again in baseball, and that was 20 years ago. So you're watching this thinking, oh my gosh, this is going back to LA. They could lose this going back to LA. We're not going to have any pitchers left. I mean, I didn't even know who was going to pitch the rest of Game 5 at one point. And then Aaron Judge, who did not have an error in 2024, did not have a single error.
And had made an amazing play earlier.
Had made a spectacular play, and an even more spectacular play if you factor in the fact that he's 6'5", 270 or something. I mean, just a remarkable catch. The kind of catch that makes you think, we're going back to LA and we're going to Game 7. And then he drops that ball. And I mean, we are going to see replays of that forever. I will see replays of that dropped ball for the rest of my life. That drop ball kind of defined this World Series in a lot of ways, even more so than the Freeman Grand Slam. Then you have the play at third where Volpe, your Gold Glove winner from last year, has an easy force play, really. I mean, once you catch the ball, you've done the hard part. Now it's just getting the ball over to third base. Dirts the ball, keeps it going. Then the brain fart of the century follows that with Garrett Cole not covering first base on the ground ball to first, which does technically qualify as a hit. But that's because
first hit of the game.
That's because there's no way to qualify something as simply a bonehead move. Doesn't cover the base. Rizzo, I think, also kind of misplays that situation. I don't think he can be let entirely off the hook. I get why he sat back on the ball, but it's the World Series. Probably would have been a good idea to come get that baseball a little sooner. Which leads to Garrett Cole, who was throwing a no-hitter until that play, having to throw, I think they said 30 additional pitches in that inning. I have never seen anything like that in a Major League Baseball game. And to see it in the fifth inning, I mean, my phone was blowing up from my rec league softball team, and almost all of them were saying, look, it's just like us. Like, we could be in the World Series next year, guys. Like, dropped routine fly ball, thrown away, easy force out, misplayed ball at first base. That's us. That's us right there. Just a shocking turn of events. Shocking turn of events. I mean, were you watching this? Did you get to see this live?
I did not, because when they fell behind 5-0, I said to your mother, well, let's just watch another show and I'll come back for the end because this thing's over. And I'm following along on game day. And all of a sudden it's 5-2 and 5-3. I said, holy, when will the show be over? So I could go get back to the game, which I did do. But at the point I got back, it was 5-5.
Yeah, just incredible. And then, anytime it seems like if you give Freddie Freeman the opportunity to do something special in the World Series, he's going to do it. So he comes up with the big hit. Teoscar Hernandez, who I think just bought himself a $120 million contract from his performance this season and postseason, comes up with the massive hit over Judge's head, which I honestly think he misplayed a little bit, but we will count that as that would have been a hit for sure. I mean, it was a spectacular comeback. The kind of mistakes, and all the Yankees said it. They said, look, if you make mistakes like that, you have to expect a World Series caliber team to take advantage of it. And you saw, if you watched the post game on the field, every Dodger they interviewed was fighting everything in his body to not reference the errors. But the line you heard the most was, they made some mistakes and we capitalized. And
from many years of coaching, first when you were playing ball, and then for half a dozen years after that, the number of times I have said to a team, like every coach in America has said to a team, even down to Little League, but mainly teenagers, high school players, and so on. What we say to them is, you can't give a team 4 outs. We say, how many times did you hear that when you're playing? You can't give a team 4 outs. And constantly, every time a mistake is made, you hear that. If the game's at all close. You certainly can't give them 6.
Yeah, but no one ever said that. No one ever said that. So this is actually the fault of their Little League coaches, because you always hear you can't give them 4 outs, but you never hear 6. So this was an unproven hypothesis the Yankees were working with, which was, let's give them 6 outs and see what happens. Just a absolute collapse. I mean, I don't think that Yankees team was really a World Series winner anyway, but I will say, any doubt anyone had that they deserved to lose the World Series went away during that inning. I mean, they did so many things through these playoffs that were embarrassing mental flubs, errors. They're the worst base running team maybe of my lifetime. And
hold it, you're a White Sox fan. Do you mean the worst postseason base running team?
I think this 2024 Yankees team was one of the worst in general. I mean, they were statistically the worst base running team in Major League Baseball. To be that and go to the World Series usually means you're treading on thin ice. It was a monumental collapse in Game 5. I'm glad the series ended on that game. I think it was a great game to end the series on. One of the most incredible games I've ever seen. Kudos to the Dodgers. One thing I get from my coworkers is I get all these text messages that are like, I can't believe it. I can't believe we won. And I'm like, y'all, you need to walk a mile in the shoes of a fan from a mid-market team or the Chicago White Sox. Because to win the World Series in 2020, sign the best player in the world and $1 billion worth of other guys, and then be shocked you won in 2024 is not a feeling that I can empathize with.
Of course, you did it without any of your starting pitchers, so that's a bit of a challenge.
We did, but we still had the 300. We still had the highest paid starting pitcher in the history of baseball pitching for us in the playoffs.
And I think he would have won Game 6.
I think so too. He figured it out. It was a good postseason run. I definitely think the most exciting series of the entire postseason was that Dodgers Padres series. I think that kind of felt like it, being at the stadium as much as I was and going to all these games, that was the series that felt most like the World Series. Like, that is when
it was much better played.
Yeah. And there's so much bad blood there. That rivalry is so intense. The number of people getting kicked out, fans, players getting reprimanded for their taunting. The stakes were high. I would say the loudest I heard the stadium was that series up until Freeman's walk-off grand slam. I mean, it was a fascinating postseason. I think the Dodgers are very much just ready to win it again next year, the year after that, probably. I'm not sure who's really going to beat them. But it was a good postseason, and we got what we wanted as White Sox fans, which was the 121 losses. Do you have any thoughts about this postseason before we get into the White Sox stuff?
No, I think that's covered all right. Got it down there. It's amazing. Postseason's amazing because your starting pitchers, if they go 3 innings, it's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I've read some things lately that Major League Baseball is trying to find a way, not necessarily in the postseason, but in general, to bring back starting pitching.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
With some regulations, and their point from MLB's point is money, as always, which is people come to see starting pitchers, which is true. I mean, if you're going to go to a game with the White Sox, you sure as hell don't want to go to a game where Garrett Crochet's not pitching.
Right.
And that's probably 10, 15,000 extra people in the stands every time you throw. It was true back for Mark Burley or Chris Sale or pick your team and pick your pitcher. So I don't know what happens in the postseason if they try to solve that in the regular season, because although people, of course, they're sold out. No, you said there were actually empty seats in Los Angeles for one of the games.
Yeah, there were empty seats at both stadiums. I mean, that is mostly the result of the
$3,000 a ticket.
Evil ticket market, especially the secondhand ticket market. I mean, most of those seats were seats that were on SeatGeek and StubHub. The seats themselves were completely sold out. It was just people, buying a $700 ticket and trying to sell it for $2,000 and then just eating the money when it didn't sell. So there were quite a few empty seats. It's a shame.
Yeah, I wonder how those guys made out, if they made so much on the ones they did sell that it made up for having another 100 that didn't sell. But
could quite possibly
something we'll probably never know. We should get to White Sox stuff.
Ticket prices in general were a real bummer this year. I mean, they were so unbelievably high, kind of throughout all of the playoffs, but I know that was actually really tough on MLB fans and Los Angeles fans this year. It was really tough. You didn't get a lot of Dodger fans who wanted to be there more than anything in the world and couldn't be in there, which I understand, but also it did seem like quite the gouging atmosphere this year in particular. So let's take a quick break, and then we will come back and we will talk about some White Sox news, which I can't believe there's White Sox news. But there is big White Sox news.
Big.
As we attempt a miraculous turnaround in 2025. So hang in there. We'll be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We had our postseason recap on the first half of the episode. But big news from the White Sox. What do you got?
Well, Will Venable. I'm perfectly happy with this choice. I thought it was as good as any that they discussed over time. As it went from, they said 60 was on their list, then they got it down to 20 for interviews, then 5 and 4 and 3. And my only hope was just keep Tony La Russa away, keep him away to anybody related to him. So I really didn't want Skip Schumacher, who's an old La Russa guy. But Venable, he says the right things now. Of course, so did Pedro Grifol. Yeah. And I wish, my memory is fading very badly at my age, but I wish it had faded badly enough that I don't remember that 2 years ago you and I were saying, well, let's give him a shot. We're okay with this so far. With Grifol. I think Venable appears on paper to be a much better choice than Grifol. He can't be worse. He was just spouting platitudes at the first press conference thing, the Zoom press conference, but maybe he'll talk in actual sentences and like a human being later on. I presume he will. So that's the big deal. Is that there is a manager. He is, I guess he's got Major League Baseball in his blood because his dad was a Major League player, as was he. We'll see what happens. I don't think that there's much you can do.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, you're interviewing people to see if they're going to lie in a 120 loss coffin or a 110 loss coffin. Venable was an okay player, fine player. Didn't do anything too special, but you don't have to have been a great player to be a great manager.
Casey Stengel never made it, so he did okay as a manager.
He's fairly young. He's only 42. So it's definitely...
we have this all 40-ish brain trust now, except for the guy who's more than twice that old and actually runs everything. But yeah, it's like Chris Getz is going out into his peer group. I mean, he did that with Bannister and the other hires that he did earlier for special consulting and whatnot. And now with Venable, be interesting to see if he stays that way with all the coaches who there. Venable's coming from an organization that obviously has done very well of late since they won the World Series last year, and had this mysterious associate manager title rather than
Yeah,
just bench
which I
coach.
was not familiar with. Yeah.
I don't think it existed before they created it for him. Uh, so that's good. I mean, he was a Cubs coach at one time, apparently liked Chicago, so he'll feel at home when he gets
Well,
here.
as an associate manager, from the TV show The Office, Dwight Schrute was always considered himself the assistant regional manager, but everyone always corrected him that he was the assistant to the regional manager. So let's hope that this is a scenario where Venable was the assistant regional manager and not the assistant to the regional manager, and is actually going to bring some good experience and techniques over from that Rangers team, which did win the World Series last year, even though it seems like a lifetime ago. After this season, he is fresh from a successful team, not so successful this past year, but they did win the World Series in 2023. I think it's a good pick. I mean, there's nothing to get excited about for this pick, but it's also not a time where you don't have the pieces.
Looking at the list, I never saw anything that goes, yeah. But then again, manager, assistant manager, and yes, I think he'll be good. I think he'll relate probably pretty well to the players. We apparently have a lot of players who don't relate well to anything. We'll see what they do about cleaning house.
Yeah, I mean, in this scenario, what you're basically given is, if you're a manager of the worst team in history and you come in, basically what you are given is a puzzle that's missing 100 of the 500 pieces. And your job is to make the guys you do have think that you have those 100 pieces and that you can create something out of this stew of garbage that will make them be more successful than that. Now, it's hard to be less successful than last year. It is possible, but it's hard. So you're not talking about, oh, we just signed this huge famous manager because we got Soto and we got Corbin Burns and we got all these things, these pieces that are going to make us contenders. What you're talking about is, this is sort of your guy who's going to come in after the disaster and just try to clean it up a little bit over the next year, next couple years, next 3 years. You're going into this job as a manager guaranteed to be a losing team. You are guaranteed to be a losing team. So the job here is really, how do I develop talent? How do I inspire these guys? How do I keep them in games? How do I keep them at least somewhat competitive at the major league level so we don't have the kind of embarrassment that the organization went through this season?
I think what's going to grade him, and in fairness to Grady Sizemore, he never had really a crack at this because he came in mid-season or late season. What's going to grade Venable to me, and I think to most baseball folks, is how they come out of spring training. Not necessarily winning games. They're not good baseball players for the most part. But if they come out making the right play, making the right throw, hitting the cutoff man, throwing to the right base, all these little things, intelligent base running, going from first to third when it's a good idea, not when it's a bad idea, having it some kind of feel for the game. But you don't get a sense of that, or haven't had a sense of that for years.
Oh, absolutely not. And it's honestly, it's the only way to have any sort of success with this roster. But the cool thing is, it is possible. If he's a great coach and he's able to get these guys fundamentally sound, you're going to lose a lot less than 121 games. If you are going out there and you don't have the raw talent that these big market teams have, but
we're a big market team.
Right. But the real big market teams, the ones who spend money, if you're not going to spend money for raw talent, what you have to do is come up with a fundamentally sound baseball team. And that is something you can do with young talent. You can work really hard on that. You can shape these guys. You can make sure that anything that happens to them in games that causes them to lose is not from mistakes. It's from the other team beating you. And you will lose a lot fewer games if that is the reason you lose games. What we saw over this past year was you're beating yourself 90% of the time, and the other team just kind of has to do the last 10% to get the win. Now, if you can really shift those numbers by playing extremely sound fundamental baseball, then you're at least interesting to watch, and you're kind of a pain in the butt to teams that are expecting to roll over you. This year, we were not a pain in the butt to any team. Teams that expected to roll over us got to roll over us. And I hope that with a new manager and a young manager that fundamental baseball will be the focus and that we can become at least competitive in these games. I still think we're going to lose 100 games, but I think there's a huge difference between 121 and 100. And if you can go from 121 to 100, you are trending in the right direction as we move forward, bringing up young guys and hopefully sign someone good here or there. Juan Soto did say he is listening to every team who wants to make an offer.
I just saw today that 11 teams have made contact with his representatives. It didn't list the 11, but I'm guessing, wild guess, the White Sox were not one of the 11. Now, obviously, they're not going to get Soto. They're not going to get anybody really good.
Hey, the White Sox could absolutely be one of the 11. They could have thrown him a very sensible 3-year, $27 million deal.
We had a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there are going to be a few free agents. They're going to have to pick up something at free agents. But let's switch over for just a minute from that to things coming. We just did not pick up the option on Yoan Moncada. That's not a surprise. The headlines nationally were wrong. They said the White Sox saved $25 million by not taking the option, but they actually only saved 20 because of the $5 million buyout. But they did not take it. That was obviously going to be true. The next step, and we're 2 weeks away. I think it's the 19th is the deadline. Will be tender or not tender. And White Sox have a long list of ARB eligible players in there. Some of which, the only one of which is obviously yes. That's Crochet,
right.
Who's then going to be traded. But he's a definite yes. Most of the rest are pretty definite no's. A couple borderline here or there on the relief pitchers. But the big question, and there's a lot of debate on this amongst White Sox fans, is Andrew Vaughn.
Right.
Vaughn's now, I think they figure that $6.5 million, something like that. And it says, is he worth it? Well, he's not. There's no question about that. But you look at the free agents of first baseman that you could pick up. White Sox aren't going to get Pete Alonso. It's not going to happen.
Right.
They're not going to. There are a couple top first basemen. They're not going to get any of them.
No, they're definitely not.
And what do they? And then your alternative internally right now is Gavin Sheets, or moving Lenin Sosa, who can't play any other position, over to first base, but he doesn't hit well enough to be first baseman. That's just a total waste. I don't know. Maybe with what Colson Montgomery and Brian Ramos both looking like third baseman now, maybe one of them could be moved over in the spring. Nobody seems to have much faith in Montgomery as a shortstop anymore. The professional guys.
No, they do not. No.
And really, he had much faith in him. He hit terrific in the fall league, but the pitching in the fall league is mainly like high school level, so that doesn't tell you much. But the other, and then in the minors, it's Tim Elko. I don't think Tim Elko's ready to be a replacement major league player, a two-war player, let's say.
Yeah.
And then beyond that is George Wolkow, who's years away if he ever makes it. So I don't know. I am not an Andrew Vaughn fan. Uh, I've never had much faith in Andrew Vaughn. He's a nice guy, but I have never had faith in him as a player. But I don't know what choice they have.
I think you pick it up. I mean, 1 year, $6.5 million. You're not getting anyone else who's better than Andrew Vaughn for a year at $6.5 million. Baseball salaries are so inflated. That number sounds big, but it's actually pretty tiny in terms of what the great first basemen are going to be paid throughout this league. So I don't see a reason not to do it, just because you need a body there. You need a warm body there. Vaughn, when he is on, is fine. He's worth $6 million when he's on. He's not on a lot, but when he is, that number's. I just don't see the harm in taking it at that price point. It's really just not much money for a starting first baseman, whether you think he should be a starting first baseman or not. It's not that much money for that. And I think it makes the most sense to keep him until you find a better option, because your option is you're going to put out guys who you're either going to put in Gavin Sheets, or you're going to put in
who's an even worse defender than Vaughn is. Vaughn's terrible,
exactly.
but Sheets is worse.
That's what I mean. And then your other option are minor leaguers who aren't ready. You're not going to get anyone on the market at $6.5 million who's better than Andrew Vaughn for a 1 year deal. I just keep him. I mean, as I said, we're not going to the postseason. We're not going to the World Series. You're not piecing together a team that can win now. What you're doing is piecing together a bridge to hopefully get you to the tunnel that has a light at the end of it. And I think when you're in that scenario, there's no reason not to spend 6.5 on a below average first baseman. You know, if I thought you could bring in Pete Alonso, and if you put Pete Alonso at first base for the White Sox and we start winning games, then I would say go for Pete Alonso. You're never going to get him, but go for it. But you're not. It's not enough to change how bad this team is. So I think you just keep him. I mean, what's the point, to be honest? I hate that I'm so like about this, but it's kind of the cards were dealt at this moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
they're not good cards.
Yeah. And then I think the hope is that throughout the season, somebody in the minor leagues shows promise, and then you can get them up and get them reps in the major leagues and start figuring out who's going to replace Andrew Vaughn. Because it's not if Andrew Vaughn's going to be replaced, it's just when Andrew Vaughn's going to be replaced. So I would just hold on to him. I think he's a pretty good clubhouse guy. I do think he plays hard. Like, I think he tries. I don't know. I'd give him a shot under the new coach. I don't expect him to turn it around, but even if he's just below average, that's what a fun way to talk about your favorite team. Yeah, if we can survive with an actual warm body there, then maybe we'll only lose 117 games. What an exciting time to be a White Sox fan.
Well, just a year or two ago, we were talking about the fact that we had an entire team of first basemen / DHs.
Yeah.
Now we don't even have that.
Yeah. We had a whole team of first basemen / DHs till we found out none of them can play first base or DH. Which just leaves us with a bunch of human beings that simply exist. Yeah, I don't know. And the free agent market, we'll get into that in a later episode, but the free agent market is not White Sox friendly. I don't think it's there will not be a big splash.
I think there's a possibility, well, they certainly should. We got a lot of potential major league starting pitchers and the upper levels of the minors. That's the one strong point of the organization. True. There are a lot of them, and there are enough of them, even if a third of them head off to Tommy John for a couple of years, or just can't deal with higher level hitting techniques. Those guys are going to have to be traded, a couple of them.
Yeah.
In exchange for position players. You have no outfielders.
Right.
I mean, you have Luis, may or may not be back next year. I wouldn't bet on it. Nobody in right field. There's something about Oscar Colas. He keeps looking like, oh, geez, he ought to be okay. And then he does such dumb things.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And I mean, obviously, you got Benintendi, who hit really well for about 3 weeks, and that's not going to happen again. It's a lot easier to hit really well in September when you're on a non-competitive team, because only the competitive teams are throwing good pitchers against you.
Yeah.
The others are trying out some of the guys that they brought up for September.
And honestly, even some of the competitive teams are not
they're saving
giving
their
people
guys.
an extra day of rest. Yeah.
Yeah, they know they want them ready for the playoffs. Yeah. So
yeah, you face the 2024 White Sox in September. Even if you do throw your ace, you're throwing them with the plan of them throwing 5 innings. You know, there's no situation where you're thinking, oh, we need 9 innings from Garrett Cole to get through the White Sox. You know, it's just not the case. But that is all the time we have for this week. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off here?
No, we head into the bleakness of no baseball for months now, which is sad. Bad as the White Sox are, bad baseball is better than no baseball.
I agree. You know, the countdown starts now. Let's see how it goes. It's going to be an interesting winter. I don't know that it will be an exciting winter for White Sox fans, but it will be interesting at least. And we will be here to talk about all of that nonsense as we head into my early prediction, which is a 99-win White Sox team in 2025. I will update that prediction as we go.
Did you mispronounce loss?
No, I'm going 99 wins. Just so if some miracle, like if a true angels in the outfield scenario happens next year, I'll be able to call back this episode and say on November 1st, I said they're a 99 win team. And then when the opposite happens,
I'll try for our next episode. I'll try to arrange an interview with this Roy Hobbs guy who says he wants to play for the White Sox.
Perfect. Well, that is all we have for this week. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you next time right here on Sharing Sox.